interesting Pokemon to see here. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he's going to take his maybe slightly quirky choice of Magnezone against Arash's slightly quirky choice of Whimsicott.
Yeah, it's kind of like a nice little matchup there between the two. I think it's a really good opportunity for Ruben to kind of put his stamp on this circuit. You know, what better opportunity to go up against, you know, such a top player like Arash. It's going to be an extremely tough game, but you want to be going up against the best players whenever you're at a tournament. And, you know, if you want to get to the end, if you want to win the event, you've got to go through these high-quality players. There's no getting away from that. So this is a first step for Ruben, you know, the first time he's been on stream, so very exciting for him. Hopefully he can kind of keep composed. Yeah, and we'll see what he does. He needs to make very good use of the Magnezone here. It's a big Pokemon for him, but I will pass over to you, and you can do a quick rundown of the team.
Well, there we go. We can see the teams in front of us now, and on Arash's side of the field, he has the Whimsicott, the Tapu Koko, Garchomp, Arcanine, Tapu Fini, and Celesteela. And Ruben will be bringing the Alolan Ninetales, Arcanine, Magnezone, Mandibuzz, Tapu Lele, and Garchomp.
The big thing, I think, on Ruben's side of the field, and you've already mentioned it, is that Mandibuzz. You know, the Whimsicott on Arash's side of the field does cause a lot of problems with that. We've already seen, you know, the prankster ability that it's got with the priority there, and the nature power, which gets that prankster priority boost. But because prankster can't be used on dark type attacks, then the Mandibuzz comes into play a lot more. Ruben also has the Tapu Lele there to get the terrain in his control, take away the electric terrain from the threatening Tapu Koko. But again, as we saw Eduardo use in the game against Barry on the last match we streamed, Arash has two terrains to utilize here to make sure that he's got whatever terrain he wants in his favor. So Ruben really needs to play carefully around that and really pick and choose when he does bring that Tapu Lele and when he switches us out to preserve for later in the game.
Exactly. I mean, setting up the terrain that you want in your favour can be so crucial into executing a strategy. And obviously your opponent, we saw in the previous game, as you mentioned, sort of getting Psychic Terrain up to prevent Fake Out, and then making sure you've got Tapu Koko in for preventing Sport. It'll be really interesting to see how these players will strategize their terrains. On Arash's side of the field, he brings in Tapu Fini and Arcanine, so Misty Terrain going to be the first one we see here in this game. And Ruben opting for the Garchomp and the Mandibuzz. So it'll be interesting if we maybe see something later in this game, as you were talking about Whimsicott and Mandibuzz, quite similar to the World Championships finals where we have both of those Pokemon in as well. So it'll be interesting to see how these two pit against each other.
Yeah, at the moment Ruben's sitting in not a bad position. You know, he's got the Mandibuzz, it's not too heavily threatened from anything on Arash's side of the field. Obviously the Tapu Fini can throw out Moon Blasts, but maybe Ruben wants to switch that Garchomp out, bring in Tapu Lele, maybe if it's holding the Psychic Seed, get the boost so can take those Moon Blasts a bit better and get a Tailwind off and put himself in a really nice position. Arcanine here maybe is threatened from the Garchomp, so Arash might want to just adjust his board position here to preserve that Arcanine. Again, it's going to be an important element for him later in the game, especially if that Magnezone is an equation on Ruben's side of the field.
Exactly, but we do see the Garchomp decide to not want to take any damage potentially from this Tapu Fini, and Ruben switches it out for his own Tapu Lele, bringing Psychic Terrain onto the field, which in turn does activate the Psychic Seed on his Mandibuzz. Arcanine, as you suggested there, Lee, doesn't want to be facing down the Garchomp that is no longer on the field and switches out for the Celesteela. Tapu Fini going for a Calm Mind here, going to start setting up. Arash played that technique so beautifully yesterday as well, so he's opting for that again today, raising the special attack and special defense of Tapu Fini as Mandibuzz sets up a Tailwind, bringing the speed control on his side of the field.
Yeah, really nice play from both players, you know, just changing up their positions from what was the starting point of the match. You know, Arash kind of switching out the Arcanine, like we said, to preserve it for later in the game if the Magnezone does come in on Ruben's side of the field. For the Celesteela that kind of is immune to those ground type attacks, and just in case Ruben decided to bring that Tapu Lele in, is now putting a lot of pressure on it. Arash taking an opportunity as well while he's got it to get a Calm Mind off with that Tapu Fini, so it's going to be hitting a lot harder now, throwing out potential Muddy Waters, Moon Blasts onto that Mandibuzz, etc. So Ruben is in a Tailwind, so it is moving first, but I feel like the Tapu Lele has to really retreat here.
And that's exactly what we see it doing. It retreats from the field, and we see that Magnezone come onto the field for Ruben. Mandibuzz going straight out for a foul play, Tailwind boosting its speed there, going straight into Celesteela, doing some good damage there. Tapu Fini going for Muddy Water. It does connect on both of Ruben's Pokemon, will do sort of decent damage to both, a huge amount of damage onto Magnezone, actually gets the drop as well of accuracy on both Pokemon, so that could be huge for him in the next couple of turns. And Celesteela opting for a Heavy Slam into what was the Tapu Lele, but as Magnezone is in there now, it's going to do minimal damage.
Yeah, and Ruben putting himself in a really nice position. The big question here is, does that Magnezone have Magnet Pull, preventing that Celesteela from switching out? If it does, it's putting him in a very strong position here, because he does threaten it with huge electric type attacks, and both things on Arash's side of the field are threatened by those quite heavily. Tapu Fini's in not a bad position, you know, it has got that Calm Mind boost up already, so it's shored up those special defenses, so it'll be able to take those electric type attacks a little bit better, but at the same time, you're not going to really want to take too many of those. The Muddy Water there was really crucial for Arash. You know, getting that damage onto the Magnezone does help him in kind of alleviating that one issue, but Ruben is in a tailwind, so he needs to make the most of these turns, so it'll be interesting to see how he goes about this next turn. Does he target into the Celesteela, or does he just double in maybe to the Tapu Fini here?
Well, we see that Magnezone does not have Magnet Pull. Celesteela switching right out there for the Garchomp. Tapu Fini sets up a Protect on this turn, doesn't want to take any damage from that Magnezone. Mandibuzz goes for a Taunt, but the Muddy Water drop there means that Garchomp will avoid that. Magnezone setting up a substitute there, I believe, and it gets to munch on its little berry as well. So not only does it manage to set up this beautiful substitute on the field, but it also gets some of its health back as well. So a great turn there.
Yeah, really nice play there. You see Arash bringing in the Garchomp, which you initially thought, right, you put yourself in a really nice position going into the next turn. You're threatening that Magnezone, but Ruben pulling out all the stops there with the substitute, protecting that Magnezone further, and then proccing that 50% berry, which then gives it all that health back. So Ruben here in a nice season, the driving seat here. He's got the foul play to go onto the Garchomp, and the Thunderbolts or electric type attacks into the Tapu Fini.
Exactly, and Arash using that Choice Scarf to Garchomp to full effect with Fire Fang, connecting onto the substitute of Magnezone, going to break it there. As Mandibuzz goes for a foul play into Garchomp, doing over half health there. Obviously Garchomp a really high physical attacker, taking lots of damage from that foul play. Magnezone going on the offensive for this turn, powering a strong Thunderbolt into Tapu Fini. It does a lot of damage there, obviously, and going for another Calm Mind. So Tapu Fini, realising the threat that it's getting from the Thunderbolts from Magnezone, wants to boost its special defense even further, so it's now sitting at +2.
Yeah, a nice turn again from Arash to get that extra boost, whilst the tailwind we do see does end there for Ruben's side of the field. We know that Garchomp is locked into Fire Fang, but I feel like Ruben has to here maybe protect that Magnezone. You don't want to take the Fire Fang and then potentially a Muddy Water as well, and try, I think his best play here maybe is to try and get another Tailwind up with the Mandibuzz. Whether or not it's bulky enough to take a combination of Moonblast and Fire Fang that Arash could target into that slot is another question, but I think you've got to try and go for that and try and get that Magnezone back in a position where you can maybe outspeed potentially the Tapu Fini and allow that Mandibuzz to get a foul play off before the Garchomp can get an attack in.
That's exactly what Ruben's doing here. He's taking his Magnezone off the field, going to reset that accuracy drop as well, as the Fire Fang from Arash's Garchomp goes into Ruben's Garchomp that he brought in for the Magnezone. Not going to be dealing much damage, and actually probably taking more from the rough skim damage there. Tapu Fini firing off a Moonblast into the Mandibuzz slot at +2. This can do a huge amount of damage, and it is enough to pick up the KO. So Ruben unfortunately loses his Mandibuzz in this turn.
And his method of speed control allowing him to get some sort of advantage on his side of the field, but he has brought in that Garchomp. You know, Arash's Garchomp at the moment is not causing too many issues. It's locked into Fire Fang, it's not threatening Ruben's Garchomp, and Ruben's Garchomp can threaten that Tapu Fini. It will outspeed it, whether or not it has a Z move. It can launch some big attacks into that slot, and also bring in the Tapu Lele again. And you know, you can work into this position. You kind of are forcing the Garchomp to switch out here, so if you target into that slot with the Tapu Lele, you may be able to pick up a big KO on Arash's side of the field.
Exactly, and with that Garchomp as well, I mean, he may want to switch that out. We can see all of Arash's Pokemon here. He's got Celesteela and Arcanine in the back there as well. So he may want to bring it out, reset its Choice Scarf so that he can go for a more dominant position in the next couple of turns and later in the game. So as you said, Fire Fang isn't going to be doing too much to Tapu Lele or Garchomp.
No, and the other thing is you could double into the Tapu Fini on Arash's side of the field, but then does Arash just protect this turn, preserving it, playing a bit more cautiously, and then approaching the next turn a bit more with a bit more momentum on your side of the field.
Exactly. Celesteela does switch in for that Garchomp, going to reset what move it can do to its Choice Scarf. The opposing Garchomp though goes for a Sword Stance, really wants to go on the offensive here and boosts its attack. Tapu Lele goes for a Psychic. This will go into the Celesteela slot, not doing too much damage. Celesteela is quite happy to take those, and we also saw the Tapu Fini protect there, so it's just going to restore a little bit of health with its leftovers, gain a little bit of HP back, and go into a maybe more dominant position into the next turn. But with that Garchomp Sword Stance, it sort of changes things.
That was huge. That was a huge play there from Ruben. Taking the opportunity, knowing that the Garchomp had to switch out, taking the opportunity there to get that Sword Stance, put that Garchomp just attack level through the roof, and now it will start really threatening everything on Arash's side of the field. So Tapu Fini is really threatened here. We saw Protect the last turn, doesn't want to stay in and take a potential Earthquake or a Tectonic Rage. Anything that Arash has on that side of the field to switch in is going to get hit by a Tectonic Rage and probably KO'd in the process.
It felt so threatened, it actually switched out. It loses all the boost that it got from Calm Minds, and instead we see Arcanine come onto the field, getting off a good Intimidate onto Garchomp there. Tapu Lele going on the defensive for this turn, goes for a Protect, doesn't want to take any damage from Celesteela, and we do actually see the Z move come out from Ruben. It is going to be the Tectonic Rage from that Garchomp. I mean, I'm assuming this is going into the Arcanine slot. I don't think Celesteela will mind taking a Tectonic Rage, but I think it's going to be going into that Arcanine, even through Intimidate. This is going to do lots.
Yeah, this is going to pick up the KO into that Arcanine, +1 Garchomp, Tectonic Rage, and yeah, Ruben doing really well here to remove one of the big threats to his Magnezone. Arash forced him into a position as well where he had to switch out that Tapu Fini, even after the 2 Calm Mind boosts that he had, which isn't ideal, but Ruben putting himself in a really good position. We see the Celesteela there get a Leech Seed onto the Garchomp, which is going to be big for that going into the latter stages of this game, kind of keeping Arash in it almost.
Exactly, I mean Celesteela loves to sit on the field, get some Leech Seeds off and just sit there and absorb everyone else's health nice and slowly. But obviously, as you said there, Ruben managed to alleviate the big thing that Arash had to counter his Magnezone. And that was the Arcanine. So now Arcanine's gone, Magnezone is able to maybe come back into the later games and really threaten both the Pokemon on Arash's side of the field right now.
Yeah, he does have to be careful still of the Garchomp coming in from Arash's side of the field, but because it is Choice Scarfed, you know, if you can scout it out, see what it's locked into, and then you can adjust your board position from there.
Oh, Garchomp there missing the Rock Slide on Tapu Fini. Garchomp loves firing off Rock Slides. Is it going to be getting a flinch potentially? We'll have to find out later. Tapu Lele goes for a Moonblast into Tapu Fini, does a huge amount of damage. Tapu Fini goes for Muddy Water. It does connect on both of Ruben's Pokemon. Going to be doing a good amount of damage. Not as much as they would have done previously thanks to the boost, but it does get an Axie Drop on Tapu Lele. Celesteela doesn't get flinched, and it's going to fire off a Heavy Slam into Tapu Lele and get the KO there. So unfortunately for Garchomp there, when there's a Rock Slide, there's a way. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for him too much in that turn.
So unfortunate there for Ruben. You know, the Rock Slide there would have probably been enough to pick up the KO with the Moonblast additional damage on to that Tapu Fini, kind of preventing any Muddy Water damage there. The Tapu Lele would have gone down regardless, other than a flinch onto the Celesteela there, so
Exactly.
Arash would have still got rid of that, but then you take away the option of the Tapu Fini as well. Big turn for Arash, and he's sitting in quite a nice position now. You know, like you said, he's still got the Scarf Garchomp in the back, so if he can just keep whittling down the Garchomp on Ruben's side of the field and bring it in late game, then he's in a nice position to kind of close this first matchup quite comfortably.
Exactly, we've seen on Ruben's side of the field as well, that Garchomp has used its Tectonic Rage. It doesn't have that really powerful attack anymore for Ruben, it's already gone. And Tapu Fini here sitting quite pretty against that Garchomp, can maybe go for a Protect, fire off a Moonblast in the later turn once we get alleviate this Magnezone. And Celesteela could be running something like Flamethrower, targeting into that Magnezone, but we actually see it go for a Protect on this turn, and Garchomp goes for another Rock Slide. Does connect this time on the Tapu Fini. We see how much damage it will do. It's not quite enough to pick up the KO, but it does get the flinch. Magnezone here going on the defensive, and will set up another substitute going into the next turn.
So seeing if the Rock Slide had hit the previous turn,
It may not have KO'd.
It probably wouldn't have KO'd, so it really didn't make too much difference, but it made difference this turn. If both rock slides hit, then you take the Tapu Fini down. The big problem at the minute is that Arash needs to preserve that Celesteela. It is heavily threatened now from the Magna Zone. You could switch in Garchomp on that slot. That might be an option because it's likely that Thunderbolt is coming out into that Celesteela now. Get your Garchomp in, get it into a nice position to get an Earthquake off, potentially next turn to switch out the Tapu Fini. So you've got the Celesteela out next to it, not affected by the Earthquake. That's one option you could go for, but Ruben must know about that, and does he play into that? Does he go for maybe Rock Slide and Flash Cannon into that slot, predicting the Garchomp to come in? And that could be a big play for Ruben. He does have the substitute up with Magnezone now, so he's still sitting in a decent position.
Exactly, it all depends on what he wants to do, and we can see the two players there really focusing on taking their time on what moves they want to do. Arash does decide to preserve that Celesteela though, brings in his own Garchomp as Ruben just keeps firing off these Rock Slides. Connects on both Pokemon. This time it is enough to pick up the KO on that Tapu Fini, so Garchomp can breathe a little sigh of relief for the moment. And Magnezone does go for the Thunderbolt, so Ruben not predicting the Garchomp coming in there, unless maybe he targeted the Tapu Fini in case Rock Slide missed again. And Garchomp is just going to sit there, take some of Celesteela's Leech Seed as well, and Garchomp on Arash's side is sitting quite pretty right now.
Yeah, it's sitting in a nice position. It's going to be able to threaten the opposing Garchomp on Ruben's side of the field, get that nab, that quick KO there.
It's going to be speedy.
The Magnezone really needs to target into the Garchomp, but the problem is, does Arash's Celesteela have Flamethrower? Because an Earthquake and then a Flamethrower is going to be able to pick up a KO for Arash and close this game up, which is slightly unfortunate for him, but Arash has kind of played to his outs here and really manoeuvred himself into a nice position here to close up this game.
Exactly, Ruben came out so strong in the blocks here and really was quite dominant at the beginning of this game, particularly getting up that tailwind with his Mandibuzz, and Arash has just managed to think ahead a couple of turns and manoeuvre the ball position to his advantage. Ruben's Garchomp, seeing the threat that is on the other side of the field, goes for a Protect, and Garchomp we do see now locks into Earthquake, which makes a lot of sense considering its partner Pokemon here is Celesteela. It's not going to mind Garchomp doing some Earthquakes. It will connect onto that Magnezone and will be enough to break the substitute, and it all will now depend on what Magnezone wants to do. Which one of Arash's Pokemon is it targeting down? With Flash Cannon, it is going to be going into that Garchomp, and it is enough to pick up the KO there on Arash's Garchomp.
But you've got to worry about the Flamethrower potentially, which we do see now come out onto Magnezone. This probably will be enough, you've got to imagine, to pick up the KO, which it is.
And it is.
And now it's one-on-one.
It's one-on-one, but we do see that Garchomp has Rock Slide, and we say it all the time, when there's a Rock Slide, there is a way. Anything is possible with Rock Slide in this game.
It is true, and the Garchomp actually can't be, you know, it's not got the Leech Seed on it anymore from that Celesteela, because the sides have swapped. So we'll see. I think it's only Ruben's only out here to go for maybe the Rock Slide. Maybe he scouts out a Protect on the Celesteela and goes for a Sword Stance one turn.
We actually see the Rock Slide miss the Celesteela. Poor Garchomp here having a rough time of its Rock Slides. And Celesteela will pick up the KO with a Heavy Slam, and game one will go to Arash Omati.
Yeah, unfortunate there for Ruben. He's Garchomp not on point with those Rock Slides this game, unfortunately. And he had two big misses there, you know, on the Tapu Fini earlier in the game, which is really unfortunate. He was in a nice position at that point as well. He's starting to really build momentum, and he kind of put the brakes on a little bit and allowed Arash to kind of get back into the game almost at that point, after the Garchomp had taken that big turn, getting the Sword Stance off and putting itself into a really dominating position. Which did really have to, you know, forced Arash to react in that situation. He got the boosts off with the Calm Mind and got himself into a great position with the Tapu Fini, taking out the Mandibuzz, taking away the Tailwind threat there from Ruben's side of the field. But you've got to feel for Ruben a little bit. The misses did kind of cost him there, but again at the same time Arash just played it so well.
On fire. He did so well, and I think the beauty of Arash's game there was he knew when to preserve his Pokemon. He would think a couple of turns ahead. He switched out the Garchomp when it was locked into Fire Fang, knowing he wanted to change up that move later. He switched out that Tapu Fini, and some people might have thought, that's a little crazy. It's set up two Calm Minds. Why would you want to make it leave the field? But he knew that he wanted to keep it later in the game to maybe target down that Garchomp. So it was just sort of a masterclass there in really thinking ahead, and sometimes what might be not the best option for that particular turn in the long run will potentially win you the game, and that's exactly what we saw Arash do here.
Definitely. I think there was turns there though in that game that Ruben could have really capitalised on. I think one of them was the turn where we mentioned the Celesteela was an obvious switch out for the Garchomp because of the Thunderbolt coming into that slot. If Ruben had just Flash Cannon into that slot, you know, his Magnezone at that point was behind a substitute and wasn't really threatened buy anything at that point. He had the opportunity to flinch the Celesteela as well, so worst case scenario is it does attack into potentially the substitute and break the substitute, but at the same time you are potentially taking down the Garchomp, which was, you know, the end game for Arash then. He knew his end game, he knew what position he needed to be in to close the game out, and fortunately Ruben just not capitalising on that. And you know, it was a risky play, but at the same time I don't know if it was, you know, something that you at this stage in the tournament, if you want to go for it or not. It was game one, obviously, so maybe it's not the time to make the big risks.
Exactly. Sometimes you need a little bit of risk to get a big reward, but at the same time, particularly in Pokemon, with so many different reads that you can make on your opponent, and a lot of the time it's not just the Pokemon you're playing, you're actually playing against the mindset of your opponent. So hopefully Ruben's maybe analysed a little bit of Arash's style here, and he can take that knowledge into Game 2. As for Game 2, he is bringing his Mandibuzz once again paired up with Garchomp, and Arash has opted for Tapu Fini and Arcanine. So Arcanine getting off a key Intimidate there onto Ruben's Garchomp, and Tapu Fini setting up its Misty Terrain.
So you've got to imagine Ruben probably wants to go for the Tapu Lele switch in again here to get that Psychic Seed boost on the Mandibuzz. One thing I would like probably to see Ruben go for here is maybe he did reveal Taunt in the previous game. Maybe go for that Taunt into the Tapu Fini to
stop the Calm Minds.
Yeah, because we saw how much damage it was doing once Arashi got a couple of those under its belt. It becomes very threatening very quickly. Doesn't really care of the tailwind, the speed control, because of how bulky it is. So I think that's got to be something that Ruben needs to keep in mind, and it will help him preserve the Mandibuzz a bit better than he did in the previous game.
It will do, and Arash deciding to preserve that Arcanine, switches it out for his Celesteela. Celesteela coming straight onto the field here in turn 2, and straight off the bat Ruben going highly on the offensive here, goes for a Tectonic Rage. Could he be possibly trying to get rid of this Tapu Fini, or if he targeted that Arcanine slot? Celesteela's there. Who has he gone into? And it was into that Arcanine. Even through Intimidate, it would have done so much damage, but great switch there from Arash, bringing in the Celesteela. Powerful Moonblast coming off from Tapu Fini though into Garchomp. Does get the special attack drop, but Garchomp doesn't mind that too much as Mandibuzz goes for a Tailwind. So Ruben there getting really unfortunate with Arash's switch, but he does manage to get Tailwind up going into the next turn.
Big switch there for Arash here. You know, he's wasted the Z move on Ruben's side of the field. That's not anything to worry about now going into the next few turns, and he's sitting in a nice position now. You know, Tapu Fini isn't going to get killed by an Earthquake or a combination of Earthquake and Foul Play. Can be taunted now, can be shut down, the Calm Mind can be shut down, the Mandibuzz is faster. Mandibuzz can also taunt the Celesteela, which is a nice option to stop those Leech Seeds, but you've got to imagine that the Garchomp wants to get out of here. It is threatened, it will go down to another Moonblast, and it's not threatening any KOs at this point.
Exactly, and it did take the Intimidate before as well, so Ruben doing exactly what he suggested there, Lee, and removing it from the field in place of his Magnezone. So once again we see this Pokemon join Ruben's side. Mandibuzz does go for the taunt straight into that Tapu Fini, going to shut down any Calm Minds that it may want to be setting up. It goes straight for a Muddy Water though, does connect on both of Ruben's Pokemon, not wanting to set up this turn and just power off a Muddy Water here, and gets the drop on Mandibuzz. Celesteela goes for the Fire move. That targets the Magnezone, and it will do a huge amount of damage, but not enough to pick up the KO there. Enough though to proc the berry, so Magnezone can have a little snack.
What a nice play and what a nice read from Arash. They knew the Garchomp was really threatened, like we were mentioning, and just decided to target into that slot. You know, that as we mentioned, the Garchomp wasn't putting on too much pressure at that point, so there was no risk in going for the Muddy Water and a Flamethrower into that slot. If the Magnezone comes in, you really capitalise there and put yourself in a bit better position going into the next turn.
Didn't he?
Not as well going for the Calm Mind, knowing that the taunt is something on Ruben's side of the field that he can throw out. And doesn't want to waste a turn, so Arash really making the most of his turns here. Magnezone is now putting a lot of pressure on Arash's side of the field, but the thing is, does Ruben go for that Protect, the substitute or not? But
well, you said it right there, he does go for the Protect, so Magnezone not taking any damage this turn, going on the defensive as Mandibuzz fires off Foul Play into Celesteela, does a good amount of damage, about a quarter there. Tapu Fini opting for another Muddy Water, goes into the protected Magnezone, but it will connect with that Mandibuzz once again. Not going to be doing too much damage, unfortunately, but again, another accuracy drop. So this poor Mandibuzz, Mandibuzz does miss the Leech Seed there as well. So I was about to say Mandibuzz is going to struggle to hit its attacks, but Celesteela can't land them on Mandibuzz either.
Dodging those Leech Seeds from that Celesteela, and I think That accuracy drop there is quite big, because if Mandibuzz does decide to go for the taunt onto the Celesteela to stop those leech seeds, there's a chance it could miss.
It missed in game 1, so...
Yeah, and that is a bit risky. And I think the thing here is Rash is probably worried about the substitute from the Magnezone and why he keeps attacking, because he doesn't want to allow a substitute to get up. That's going to put him in an even worse position. So kind of forcing Ruben not to go for that substitute and maybe go for attacks instead, but then it's difficult because both Pokemon on Rash's side of the field are heavily threatened by the Magnezone. I think he's got to pick his moment right, maybe switch the Garchomp in and wait for that Tailwind to run out to get some big attacks off.
Exactly. Mandibuzz, though, goes for a Roost, doesn't want to worry about accuracy drops here, restores all of its HP, and Magnezone going on the offensive here, targeting down Tapu Fini with a really powerful Thunderbolt, does a huge amount of damage. Tapu Fini retaliates with a Muddy Water, but this time it misses the Magnezone and will only connect on that Mandibuzz for very minimal damage there. Celesteela here going for that Flamethrower into Magnezone, going to do really good damage here. Takes it down to just about sort of a quarter left there, so nice to see Magnezone going on the offensive here. We've seen Ruben kind of play it quite defensively, particularly setting up the substitute, and in game 1 when he was in the same pairing here, he was against Tapu Fini and Celesteela but opted for the substitute instead, so it's nice to see it going on the offensive in this turn.
Yeah, nice to see it taking advantage of that last turn of Tailwind, but the Tailwind has run out now. Mandibuzz does need to prioritise, probably going for another Tailwind here and preserving that Magnezone like we've seen it switch out for the Garchomp.
Exactly, Magnezone being preserved for later in the game, and Garchomp once again rejoins the field. Tapu Fini doing what it wants to do this game and Muddy Watering. It will connect on both Pokemon, will be enough to pick up the KO on that Garchomp. Again, not doing too much on the Mandibuzz, and Mandibuzz does quite rightly go for Tailwind, as you said there, Lee. It'd be interesting now to see what the Celesteela did, and it was a Leech Seed. This time it does connect, it finds the Mandibuzz and sets up Leech Seed.
Mandibuzz not being able to dodge out the way, getting that Tailwind up this time around. So Rash does get the Leech Seed onto the Mandibuzz, which is pretty nice, because the one thing with Mandibuzz is, and you know, with the seed boost with it, you don't want to switch it out and to lose those boosts. You want to keep it on the field, and that's the beauty about getting a Leech Seed onto it. You know, you can get that sustained recovery and you're whittling it down turn after turn. Thing is, Mandibuzz has now got that Tailwind up again. Probably Ruben wants to bring in the Magnezone, which will threaten both the Tapu Fini and the Celesteela. So I don't know, it's probably not got enough health. It might just have enough health to squeak out a substitute, but only Ruben will know that. And again, does Arash want to risk protecting on it to allow it to get that substitute up? That's the question.
Exactly, and we still haven't seen the 4th Pokemon from Arash either, so if he did maybe want to switch out his Tapu Fini or his Celesteela that is threatened by that Magnezone, we could possibly see his Garchomp come back in here. We just don't know what Pokemon he's got in the back, or even if he has brought that Choice Scarfed Garchomp. Mandibuzz, however, leaves the field, wants to reset its accuracy drops, and we bring in the Tapu Lele, who just wants to put its beautiful Psychic Terrain back on that field, preventing any sort of priority. The battlefield has got weird, and Tapu Fini goes for a Protect, so going on the defensive here from Arash's side of the field, not wanting to take damage from that Magnezone, and Celesteela decides to join Tapu Fini in the defensive play, both having a Protect here, and Magnezone goes for a Thunderbolt. It did target down the Celesteela, so Tapu Fini would have been free to maybe get off another Muddy Water.
Yeah, the nice thing here for Ruben is he's in a really good position, because I think you have to target into the Celesteela with the Magnezone here. Maybe double into it with a Moonblast and a Thunderbolt, just in case that Garchomp comes in. If it doesn't, you've still got to worry about the Tapu Fini, because I still think this Celesteela is probably out of range from a Thunderbolt, but we don't know what if Rash even has the Garchomp in the back at this stage, but you've got to imagine he has. It was so good in game 1, there's no reason for him not to bring it game 2, and probably now isn't a bad time to bring it in. But at the same time, you know, the Tapu Lele is going to be threatening big damage with those Psychic and Moonblast attacks.
Exactly. Well, we're not seeing the 4th Pokemon at the moment. Arash does switch out his Tapu Fini, brings in the Arcanine, going to fire up an Intimidate, but both these Pokemon aren't going to mind that too much. It is just going to heavily threaten that Magnezone. Tapu Lele goes for a Psychic, going into the Arcanine slot, going to do a huge amount of damage, taking it down to 28 HP, as Magnezone goes for a Thunderbolt. It does target down that Celesteela, having protected the last turn, and actually gets the paralysis as well. Celesteela revealing that it has a berry there, not something like leftovers that we normally see Celesteela goes for Flamethrower though, however. That will connect onto the Magnezone and it will be enough to pick up the KO here. So Magnezone dealing a huge amount of damage to Celesteela. Celesteela taking it like a champ, gets the paralysis, but powers through to pick up the KO back on that Magnezone with a special defense boost as well.
Yeah, and you know, Ruben now in a really, really difficult position. He's got the Mandibles to come in. He has reset those accuracy drops that he got from the Tapu Fini's Muddy Waters. Does threaten foul play damage onto both Pokemon here. But I feel like the Celesteela is just out of range, and Celesteela, you know, it is paralyzed, but it's still in a really dominant position. It can heavy slam straight into the Tapu Lele and probably pick up a clean KO there. And if it wants to, it can go for another Leech Seed, attempt that onto the Mandibuzz, and start just whittling things down when Arash has still got pretty much all of his resources in the back, where Ruben's not really got too many options. So it's going to be difficult to come back from this position.
As well, that Celesteela not going to be threatened by Tapu Lele, particularly with the special defense boost. Tapu Fini comes back onto the field though, going to reset the terrain to Misty, so that Tapu Lele doesn't get its Psychic boost. It does go for a Psychic though, however, into Tapu Fini will be enough to pick up the KO. But Celesteela is just going to be such a problem for Ruben here in these last sort of closing turns of the game. Mandibuzz does fire off quite a powerful foul play into Celesteela though, but it breaks through its paralysis and goes for a heavy slam onto Tapu Lele. It's not quite enough to pick up the KO though. A bulky Tapu Lele there, sporting its berry as well. We've seen a lot of berries on the field today, those 50% restoring berries. So yeah, Tapu Lele, you know, doing really well there, managing to take that heavy slam, and Celesteela, yeah, it's looking quite good.
It is looking good, yeah. Broke through the paralysis there, like you said, managed to get that heavy slam off, but really, really interesting to see one of those 50% berries on Tapu Lele. And Tapu Lele being able to take that heavy slam is really surprising, because you know, Tapu Lele is generally the amount of defensive investment you need to be able to take that is quite a lot. Now, depending on how fast this Tapu Lele is trained, you know, it is very defensively bulky. It might be able to outspeed the Arcanine and pick up a quick KO here. And you never know what could happen with the Celesteela if it gets fully paralyzed this turn. It would put Arash into a really bad position, and then Ruben back into the driving seat almost. So it all depends on the speed of the Tapu Lele, whether it can nab that knockout onto the Arcanine, and whether or not the Mandibuzz has enough to take the Celesteela down with the foul play, or whether or not we see a fully paralysis come out this turn.
Exactly, the Arcanine is faster though, and it fires off a Flare Blitz into that Mandibuzz slot. It is enough to pick up the KO, so Ruben now left with his bulky Tapu Lele on the field. It's Tapu Lele against the world. Arcanine will be KO'd by its own recoil, so we may be seeing what Arash's fourth Pokemon is if Celesteela gets fully paralyzed. Moonblast coming out from Tapu Lele into Celesteela, not going to be doing too much damage, and it is fully paralyzed, so Celesteela unable to move this turn. Depending on what that Pokemon is in the back, and if Celesteela can not power through the paralysis, Tapu Lele could be in a good position here, but it is that Choice Scarfed Garchomp.
And I think Arash has probably got enough to close this game out. You know, even as bulky as Tapu Lele is, I think Ruben has to rely on the Celesteela being paralyzed a few more turns, and kind of be concentrating, getting rid of that before the Garchomp, and that just allows the Garchomp to just Earthquake freely, and 2 Earthquakes here are going to be more than enough.
And it actually has Poison Jab, so
yeah,
just going to be going straight into Tapu Lele. It is enough. Oh, it's not enough to pick up the KO there. Tapu Lele being so strong and bulky there. Going for Moonblast into Garchomp, which is actually enough to pick up the KO here onto Arash's Garchomp. Oh, it depends. And Celesteela is paralyzed as well, so
huge twist right here.
Yeah, like this is actually crazy. Celesteela here being so strong and dominant, and we were saying it's in a great position, but it just can't move.
Yeah, can't move, and you've got to think now, can it be paralyzed one more turn? Can you get the Psychic, get maybe a special defensive drop, and then, you know, maybe you've got enough to take it? But we see a Moonblast come out from the Lele. It's doing minimal damage, so the Celesteela is going to have to be paralyzed a lot. But as we see,
unfortunately it didn't get the third paralysis, so third time lucky there for Arash, who managed to get his Celesteela to break free and pick up the KO on Tapu Lele. So Arash Omati taking his top 8 game here in true style. Few tense moments there, but he will be advancing onto top 4. That was an absolutely incredible game.